morning. It's a real pleasure to be here. It's great that it's my first time coming to one of these Sustainable Energy Alliance meetings, and I'm really excited to be here. I'm glad that there's a community in Delaware that's interested in sustainability. We at Xergy are very excited, very much part of the whole sustainability equation, and I'm going to take a few moments, if you will, to just introduce myself and share some of the background, some of the reasons, if you will, why we're in business and what excites me, what gets me up every day, and to do what I'm doing. So, getting right into it, and I think there's yeah, okay. So I usually start off by saying that I'm a global citizen, but actually, in fact, I'm Iranian born, and I'm a U.S. citizen, proud U.S. citizen, naturalized. And I've been in the United States since 1986, and I live in Sussex County. My background basically is that my parents worked for the Iranian Foreign Service, and I ended up traveling around the world with them. Ended up going to University of London in England, and went to Columbia University in the US, started working for Gore. While I was in New York, I worked for a company called Forex, and eventually ended up at Teledyne Energy Systems before I started my own businesses. And that was, I had a 10-year non-compete when I started my own business, so I ended up getting into real estate and opened up some laundromats, and I've been in various businesses down in Sussex County before I started Xergy. And but the take home here really, more than anything else, is that are three things. The first thing is that I very much have a global perspective on things, and you'll see in my presentation, you know, that we work globally, work internationally. We're involved with a lot of things on a sort of global basis, and I'll be comparing at some points technology overseas with what's going on in the U.S. Second thing is that you know, being Iranian, growing up in the 70s and 80s in the West, you definitely have a sensitivity or sort of level of interest in energy affairs and oil and what's going on in revolutions and stuff. So I've been in, you know, and really because of all that, because I'm an engineer and I'm Iranian, you know, I've been in this game a long time, 30 years. So when it comes to new technology, when it comes to sustainability, when it comes to a lot of these things, you know, there's always been a lot of hype and a lot of excitement about new products, and then they don't happen. And I remember when I was at Gore, and we got involved in the Sonic Exchange memory product there, at one point Bob Ford turned around to me and said, Bamdad, fuel cells were 5 years away 20 years ago. And you know, it's important for us to stay very grounded when it comes to sustainability and talk about things that are real, and that are today issues, that are possible today. Now, for us, 9/11 was a really big deal, but you know, there's another date in the energy world that's probably as important, and that's 3/11/11. And does anybody know what happened on 3/11/11? No. Fukushima. There was a nuclear, the Fukushima Daikin nuclear power plants, their backup generators didn't work, and there was a massive disaster, if you will, in Japan. But what a lot of people don't realize is that fundamentally changed the outlook for nuclear power globally, and transformed really the energy picture in so many ways globally, and it's still a factor today in a lot of things that are happening. But in the European Union, countries like France and Belgium, where they were producing about 80 or 90% of their electricity using nuclear power, have essentially abandoned nuclear power. They've decided that they're going to mothball all their nuclear power plants, and they're shifting heavily to natural gas. And in the next 10, 15 years, Europe is going to essentially be $1 trillion natural gas market. And they need supply, and the only supply really is from Russia right now. And so there's a lot of upheaval in the Middle East, with people trying to get access to Europe, across countries that are not giving them access, with wars and a lot of turmoil. North Africa too, with Libya, all about getting natural gas to Europe. And so what's happened, and Europeans know this, you know, it's a sort of, they see the backlash with immigrants and stuff with what's going on, is that there's a real impetus in Europe to get renewable energy in and to try to get as much of this capacity that they're mothballing in the form of renewable energy. And the same thing, incidentally, is happening in China. China's energy picture is growing. Same thing's happening in BRICS, you know, Brazil, India, South Africa, and there's a massive shift towards natural gas and also a massive shift towards renewable energy. And so in the European case, the EU's mandated that 20% of their generation capacity is going to come from renewable energy. There's a massive effort with new investment, and I was just traveled to see some customers and some vendors in Europe. I happened to go to 3 or 4 countries, drive through 3 or 4 countries, and one of the things that startled me was that, because I go to Europe a lot, was the huge new level of investment that they've been making in wind power and renewables. You see it everywhere. And I was at Rotterdam at in April at the International Energy Agency conference on heat pumps. And I went to the Rotterdam Maritime Museum. You know, it's a big port, massive port. And they had this huge exhibition on how they're going to build wind farms out in the North Sea. And they're moving a lot of the capacity that they used for building North Sea oil platforms in Northern Europe towards building wind generators out in the North Sea. But there is definitely a big push, and China too is leading the way, if you will, with investment into renewable energy. So here's some pictures from my car of wind generators on the side of the highway in Europe. And when I got into Paris, when I rented the car, it was not in France, and they said to me, you know, by the way, you need a CRIT air permit. Well, what's a CRIT air permit? Well, apparently in Paris, you need this little sticker on your car, and depending on what the fuel consumption is in that car, what it uses, you have to pay, you know, so much a year to have that. You have to buy that permit before they'll let you in Paris. I happened to get in anyway without it. And on the Sunday, this was right at the end of last month, and on this Sunday, October 1st, they had this one day in Paris with no cars. And they're mandated, the French government's mandated, you know, that all hydrocarbon-fueled cars will be will not be allowed after 2040. So there's a lot of drama, if you will, around renewable energy in Europe, and I think it's interesting to share with you. But from a U.S. perspective, and I hope I'm not offending anybody by saying this, but we are behind sort of the global technology race for renewables. We're behind in the installation race for renewables, and U.S. And of course, one of the reasons is we have plenty of cheap natural gas. It's hard to get decent ROIs on some of these projects when you know, the competing technology is great and provides great returns. And a lot of the push that's, you know, on what's going on is especially in Europe, but also in the Far East, is around pollution, around global warming and reducing CO2 emissions, but it's not ROI. And a lot of these projects that are going on overseas are heavily subsidized by their governments to a level that actually is not available in the United States. But I think it's a fact that there is a global industrial revolution going on, and if we don't participate, there will be consequences. And also, I should say, it's very, very important that renewable energy is a source of job growth globally, tremendous job growth, and that's an opportunity for the United States. So here's some big buts, all right? Yes, all this renewable energy is interesting. Yes, they're putting all this capacity in Europe and China and everywhere else, but there are some real serious issues with renewable energy. And one of them is that there aren't really good, excellent storage solutions, and the technologies are inherently intermittent. Whether it's solar or wind, they don't produce energy exactly when you need it, and we need some really good technology for storage. A lot of the energy appliances, viable energy appliances that can use renewable energy are not quite here yet. And for sure Tesla's doing great, and a lot of electric cars are being built, but there's 75 million cars a year produced. And do we have enough lithium? Do we have enough components to completely transform the transportation infrastructure? We need, there needs to be ongoing and continuous innovation still to make this a reality. Another fact is that renewables can't displace fossil fuels in the near term. We don't have enough land. We don't have enough, if you will, wind resources available where we can easily build wind turbines or even solar panels to be able to displace fossil fuels. And the other thing is that the economics right now for a lot of renewable technologies is kind of marginal, and people shouldn't expect subsidies to last. I mean, one thing that was interesting for me was in a few states in Germany, and when they had a budget crisis, the first thing they cut was subsidies for renewable power. So these things really have to work on their own economics. And you really have to look at the bigger picture, and the bigger picture is this chart that the EIA has provided on how they expect energy generation to progress over the next 20, 30 years. And what you find is that, yes, renewables are going to grow. They're going to grow substantially. The good news is we can probably have 10 times the amount of renewables that we have right now. And there's going to be tremendous growth in renewable energy. And if you're in that business, there's a lot of opportunity. But at the end of the day, the majority of energy that's produced, 80% plus, is going to come from hydrocarbon sources. And it's not going to come from renewables. And that's just a simple fact. And so, before I talk about Xergy and our products, what I want to say is that the energy generation picture is really half the picture. It's not the full picture. We really have to look at energy consumption, okay? If we're interested in sustainability, if we're interested in renewable power, and yes, okay, we can probably install 20% of today's capacity in renewables, but if we have total energy demand, that could be 40%. It could be double. So if we don't look at energy consumption as a critical issue, then we're kind of forgetting what the real mission is about, which is to reduce energy consumption totally. And there's a lot of talk about climate change, a lot of talk about CO2 emissions, but let me tell you from a global perspective what's actually going on, okay? We are looking at a massive shift in global demographics. The middle class globally is going to increase from about 1.5 billion to close to 5 billion people in the world, and they're all going to have air conditioners, refrigerators, and the world's population is going to grow to close to 9.1 billion. And in the world of business, whether you're in retail or whatever, demographics is destiny, right? You want to put a new store in a town, find out how many people live there, right? Because that'll tell you fundamentally what the business opportunities are. And this is what's going on globally in terms of demographics. And the global issues are much greater than CO2. The issue is resource scarcity. And people are going to need more housing, more water, more cell phones, more food, more schools, and yes, of course, more energy, more cars. And by the way, it's not just a middle class shift, a growth in middle class, but there's actually a huge effort for rural electrification globally. There's something like 1.9 billion people who don't have electricity in their villages and their homes. And it's a big deal. And water, by the way, is a critical issue, far bigger issue than people realize. We're about 2 billion human beings are going to be in water-scarce, water-stressed regions. And I have a sort of a rhetorical question. Does anybody know what the single largest use of water in the United States is? What the single largest sector that uses water? Does anybody know? Electricity generation. So water and electricity generation are intertwined, and it's a critical issue. So all of this is going to lead, of course, has led to climate change, loss of biodiversity, deforestation, pollution, dead zones in the ocean, overpopulation, and especially scarcity. It's a big deal. And we're going to need 6 planet Earths soon. And there's going to be massive competition for resources. And I don't want to be the purveyor of bad news, but this will lead to wars, and it'll be within our lifetimes. The things that we haven't sensed, but I sense it because I travel overseas tremendously for our business. So to avoid continuous conflict, we have to address resource scarcity head on, and this is a war, actually. Probably a bigger war than the Second World War. And it should be a priority for us. And there are solutions, and technology has to come to the rescue. And which, by the way, it's done that already. I mean, we developed the fertilizer Haber-Bosch process in the turn of the century and produced fertilizer and managed to increase yields on agriculture at the turn of the century. That has had a huge impact in helping population growth in this last century. LED lighting. What a great technology story, and the impact that that's had on one of the largest uses of electricity globally. So I think it can be done, and this is where real opportunities for future business exist. It's right here, and it's an opportunity for the U.S. to lead with soft power, and we have a tremendous, a unique, unparalleled technology development infrastructure in this country, an infrastructure that doesn't really exist in other countries in the same way. And I'm proud to say that Xergy is really part of that. And that's the story that I'm about to tell with Xergy is really part of how the technology infrastructure in this country has helped us start up as a company and then develop products to fulfill this mission. Because this is, I think, a very important mission for us as a nation, for us as a planet. So here's the core premise, okay? People want to know why we're called Xergy, all right? It's a thermodynamic term, Xergy. And it means, it's the maximum useful work that a system can produce. It's called Xergy. And I always say, don't save energy, save Xergy. Because the true enemy of the future is waste. True enemy of the future is waste. If you look at 30 grams of coal, and as it migrates through a power station, and the electricity is transmitted, and then it finally ends up in 0.02 kilowatt hours of light, you lose 80–90% of that energy in that 30 grams of coal by the time it provides a useful, functional service to end users. And the truth is, we actually have the resources we need. We're just wasting a lot of it. And the whole issue is how can we have energy conversion in the most efficient, in the best way possible. And I would submit, and I have submitted, I've told a lot of people that ionic systems are inherently exhibit higher Xergy efficiency. If you look at the thermodynamics, you look at things from first principles, ionic systems have inherently better Xergy efficiency. And capturing this Xergy is like discovering new resources. It's like you've suddenly found a bunch of oil fields, whatever. Efficiency gains are, in effect, resource gains. So, where do you see evidence of this fact? Well, in biology. Almost all biological systems are ionic. And if you look at evolution over 2.4 billion years, slowly, systematically, we've gotten to a point where biological systems seem to offer us some of the best ideas, best concepts for energy, for saving Xergy. And that's where we got a lot of inspiration, if you will, for the developments and the products that we pioneer. I just want to say one other thing before I get sort of more into the meat of what Xergy does. But if you look at energy use by sector, and also what the DOE calls the energy-water nexus, one of the interesting facts is that as we go forward, the auto sector is probably going to get dwarfed by water and HVAC use for energy on a global scale. In fact, we're going to see almost an exponential growth in HVAC use in the third world. And this is something that maybe people in the United States are not aware of. There's about 75 million internal combustion engines that are produced, but there's 130 million vapor compression units, almost double, used in HVAC. And of course, seawater, getting water from seawater, there's a huge scarcity of fresh water, and we're going to migrate in a direction where getting fresh water from seawater is going to be a critical issue. And if you look at where things are going, IC engines are moving towards fuel cells and batteries. Seawater, of course, is moving towards reverse osmosis. There's also technology using ionic systems based on evaporation. And one of the things that we've been working on at Xergy is migrating vapor compression systems to electrochemical ionic systems, which I'll describe briefly in a few seconds. But anyway, our premise at Xergy is that controlling the movement of ions and molecules through nanoscale channels, ionic channels, offers revolutionary pathways for solving problems, and therefore a whole new range of new products, home energy, industrial, and sensing products can be developed based on these materials. And our vision is to become what Intel has become for electronics in sort of the world of ionics. We call it integrated ionics, and to create these high-value, high eco-impact products based on this technology. And the inherent problem is that ion exchange materials are weak, and they need to be reinforced in order to have functional utility, and that's what we do. And so we package these ionic materials and we make great products for them. And these ion exchange materials have two core properties. One of them is that they conduct ions, cation, anion, but they also transport polar molecules across them. And we've received, if you will, grants to support this activity. Our core value proposition at Xergy is that we can take these very exotic ionic materials and use less of them because we make very thin structures. But by making thin structures, we actually produce high performance products, and that's fundamentally our value proposition. And it's sort of a revolution in value creation because we use less materials that do more work, more useful work, and provide higher performance. So we make these ultra thin, ultra strong, ultra high performance materials, and that's our core competence. So let me go back quickly. So our magic, if you will, is that we can customize these ion exchange materials for applications. No one else can do that. Everybody else that's in this space is married to one chemistry. We actually have a variety, can take any chemistry and package it and turn it into useful systems and products. And we have, I think, close to 85 patents right now in the process. So the validation, if you will, of this technology came through, well, back in 2008, 2009, I was holding my head and my real estate business wasn't going very well. Other things, there was a national crisis, banking crisis, if you will, going on. And I had all these ideas from the time when I worked at Gore, but I hadn't really explored them because I couldn't. And me and a friend of mine, we submitted one of these ideas to the GE Eco-Imagination competition. And a year later, I found myself in New York with the award, with the Eco-Imagination Award. And we became, if you will, partnered with GE Appliances through this journey in commercializing our products and our technologies. And then a couple of years ago, GE Appliances got sold to Haier in China, which is the world's largest appliance company. And so we've been working now with Haier for the last two years to, we have a whole number of projects with them. And then we've also gotten a lot of awards from the DOE in the process of commercializing this technology, which really when we won the GE Co-Imagination competition, was just an idea in the back of an envelope. It wasn't much more than that back 5-6 years ago. So there's a whole bunch of different products that can be produced for homes and cars and ships and industrial applications, and I'm going to focus primarily on products for the home, products that are publicly disclosed through the work that we've been doing with GE and now Haier. So these are examples of the products. I won't belabor you with this slide. I think the next slide is probably one that I should dwell on just a little bit. So the first product, one of the products that we're working on is an ionic liquid desiccating system using ionic liquids and ionic membranes. And so these ionic liquid desiccant systems are used with existing HVAC systems. And they absorb water vapor on one side, on the cool side, and then regenerate on the hot side, on the condenser side of the HVAC system. And basically they split the sensible load from the latent load on HVAC systems, which is a huge energy savings, about 20%. And we're busy building these systems and commercializing them. Another product that our membranes are used in are energy recovery modulators, ERVs. Are people familiar with ERVs? I'm guessing some of the folks in the energy assessment business are, but it's an existing product line, but we have a more advanced membrane for these ERV systems. But in essence, what they do is they utilize the energy that's contained inside a building, inside the air inside the building, and exchange that with air that's coming in from outside the building, and you can recapture some of that energy through an ERV system. Another product that we make is a direct ozonation system. Now there are ozonation systems based on corona discharge, but we actually have an electrochemical ozonation technology that puts ozone directly in water. And it's a really nice, neat, small device. It can be right inside the back of a washing machine or a dishwasher. The beauty of this is you don't need soap. You can provide disinfected water, and you don't need hot water. You can wash clothes and wash dishes with a direct ozonation system, and it works beautifully. And it's one of our very exciting products. Another product, home appliance that uses Xergy technology. That, of course, you guys are, I'm sure, familiar with hybrid hot water heaters. In the U.S., they haven't really taken off as a product line. But in China, they sell over 1 million of these. And they save over 60% of the energy that it takes to heat water. It's a great product. And one of the reasons why it hasn't taken off in the United States is because they make a lot of noise. They use heat pumps. And people don't want them in their bathrooms or in their closets. You know, people hide them in their garages or in the basements or whatever. Those people that have bought these units. And there have been subsidies, there's been a lot of support for pushing these hybrid hot water heaters. But with our technology, with the Xergy heat pump, electrochemical heat pump, the systems, it's a solid state heat pump. They're noiseless and they work more efficiently, about 20% more efficiently than current systems. And so we think that we can change the picture or change the equation, if you will, on hot water, hybrid hot water heaters, and maybe get them back into the picture in the United States. Another technology that we're working on, very excited about, are occupancy sensors. And a lot of you may know that there are CO2 sensors out there. They work on infrared and they're very expensive. But the occupancy sensor that we're working on, the solid state sensor, is a very low-cost, simple device that can go into every room. And I think that with sort of the emergence of smart homes, these occupancy sensors, once they're commercialized, can have a massive impact on actually putting the energy, putting the heating and cooling where it needs to be in a building, instead of cooling this whole structure, just putting that heating and cooling right where people are, and that could be a huge energy savings. And finally, with our humidity and oxygen control systems, we've been able to transform refrigeration in that way. You know, when you reduce a little bit of oxygen in the refrigerator, you can extend the life of food from 3 days to multi-weeks just by reducing the oxidation levels. So really, I think with a lot of these appliances, if we're successful with just 2 or 3 of them, I think we can have almost a massive effect on HVAC energy use globally, maybe as much as a 50% savings as our products are introduced into the market. So just Quickly, we've done all this with our own cash. We have no VC money. And a lot of it's come really through government grants and support. I mean, we've been very serious about getting this money and commercializing these products, and using taxpayer funds to be able to innovate. And a lot of it, of course, comes down to creativity. At the heart of all this is your ability to come up with neat ideas, great ideas that you can execute on. We've done this with a lot of support, both with good folks inside and outside. University of Delaware has been tremendous. There's some amazing people working there that have partnered with us, Dr. Yushan Yan, Dr. AJ Prasad, and we're very proud to be part of the state, part of the technology infrastructure of the state that's really helped us grow as a company. And last thing, my last slide, is that in going to Korea, I once went by this massive steel mill, Pohang Steel, that makes all the steel for Hyundai cars, and they had this big sign right at the entrance under the gate that said, "Resources are limited, but creativity is unlimited." And that's really our mantra at Xergy. We try to utilize our creativity, knowing that we have limited resources as a small company, and we've been able to innovate and work with our partners and get a lot of great products developed. And hopefully we'll be able to address the resource scarcity issue globally, which I talked about. And I hope that that's some inspiration for other people to do the same thing, for us to make a big positive change. Thank you.